And we are back. We got a ton of screens to build in this course and a ton of logic as well. So I'm going to keep moving here, and we're going to move pretty fast to get through some of this stuff. In the last video, we set up our welcome view, then pushes to the onboarding flow. So in the final version of the app here, when I click get started, it pushes into this screen. This screen is not really doing much for us right now, but I put this in the course because I think when you go build your own app, you're going to have a bunch of different custom onboarding screens. And so just having a basic flow of 3 or 4 screens will allow you to at least then go and customize the flow as you need to in your app. So we're just kind of putting this in here as a placeholder, although it is actually a pretty good screen, and a lot of onboarding flows do start with some sort of explanation of what you're signing up for. So let's build this screen out pretty quick. It's going to be very simple, as you can tell. I'm going to open up the onboarding folder that we have here. We already started our onboarding completed view, but we're actually going to go to a couple other onboarding screens before we get to the completed view. Let's right click and create a new folder, and I'm going to call this the intro view. And let's right click that, create a new file from template, SwiftUI view. We'll call this the onboarding intro view. Let's click create and jump inside here. Let's click resume on the canvas. Let's get the preview working here. I'm going to hide the navigator. I'm going to show the final version. Let's go ahead and create a VStack here. Inside the VStack, we're going to add a text that says, make your own avatars and chat with them. And then we'll have maybe 2 line breaks. So here I'm going to put a \n for a line break in Markdown. And then I'll do 2 line breaks, followed by have real conversations with AI generated responses. Let's start giving this a font of maybe title 3. As you can see in the design here, the word avatars is a different color. So there's different modifiers that I want to apply to that piece of text from the rest of the text. If I put it all into one text field here, I can only apply modifiers to the entirety of the text. But in SwiftUI, we can actually break this into multiple texts and then concatenate them. So what we're going to do instead is break this down into a couple texts. Let's create a text, and let's put a couple of these on the screen. The first one will be make your own, and then I'll put a space at the end of that. And then we're going to put avatars in its own text. So avatars, and I'll put a space at the end of that. And then we'll do end chat with them all the way down to the word have. So have, I'll include the space. Let's put that here. Real conversations should be in plural. So real conversations, that's going to have its own color, as well as with AI generated responses. We'll put in the last text here. So I will cut this. I'm going to comment out this modifier for a second. I'm doing this comment out with the command / button to comment out a line here. And what we're going to do is concatenate all of these texts. So right now they're in a VStack, which is why they're all separate. But if I just add them together, literally with the plus sign, so I can go like this and add 2 texts together. But I like to put these on separate lines just for readability. So I'm going to put the plus on a separate line. So we'll add a bunch of addition signs here, and now they're all concatenated into one. Have real conversations, space with AI generated responses. So now that these are all separate text components, I can go ahead and customize the avatars to have a foreground style of accent, as well as a font weight of semi-bold. And I'm going to do the same thing for the real conversations down here. And then on the entire VStack, let's just add this font modifier of title 3. Below this, I'm going to add another call to action button. So similar to the call to action button that we already had on our welcome view. So let's go to the welcome view. Let's find our CTA buttons section, and let's just copy this button here. Let's go back to our onboarding intro view, and I will paste in this button. This will say continue instead. And I want to make this expand as much as possible to take up the whole frame. So let's give this a frame with a max height of infinity. SwiftUI is going to give us a compiler error here. So because we're using this text concatenation, any modifier on these texts must be a text modifier, and it cannot be just a generic SwiftUI view modifier. So to solve this, we're just going to put these texts inside another container. Could be a Z stack, could be any kind of stack, but I'm just going to use a group. So we'll group them all together, and then we'll add the frame onto the group here. Let's push this off of the edge a little bit with maybe padding of 24. And let's also add a baseline offset, which will be maybe 6. Baseline offset is basically the line spacing between each of these lines, just to space it out a little bit because we have so much extra space on this screen. And then in addition to this padding of 24, let's put another padding of 24 on the entire VStack, just to push everything off of the edge of the device a little bit. This is looking pretty good. Let's copy the name of the onboarding intro view. We're going to go to our welcome view and make sure that our welcome view goes to the onboarding intro view. And now from our onboarding intro view, we are not going to go to the onboarding completed view, but actually we're going to go to the select a color view. So in this onboarding flow, we're actually going to have a screen where the user selects the color that they want for their profile. And then we're going to go and use this profile color throughout the application. So the reason we're doing this is basically just to mimic a lot of onboarding flows have a lot of situations where users are making selections. The user maybe gives you information about why they like the product, or maybe they're setting up their user profile. So adding a profile color is kind of mimicking that. So this way we can go through the data flow of selecting, adding data to the user profile, saving that to the user profile, and then moving into the application. Just an example that would mimic a real world use case. Let's go ahead and build this screen now as well. So we're going to come open up the navigator. Let's create another folder in our onboarding section. I'm going to call this one the color view. Right click a new file from template, SwiftUI view, and I'll call this the onboarding color view. Let's click create, open this up. I'm going to hide the navigator and let's get coding. This view is going to be a little bit more difficult. We're going to make this scrollable so that we can add a whole bunch more colors in here if we want to. And then we need to add some logic to make this animate as we select it. And of course, we'll add a continue button at the bottom. Let's start with that scroll view, and we'll open the brackets here. Inside the scroll view, we want to use a grid. So there are a couple different grid components in SwiftUI now. There's a grid as well as a lazy V grid, which is what we're going to use. Let's open the parentheses here. I'm going to hold the option button and click enter on this so that I get all of the completion here. We're going to close the canvas for a second. I'm going to triple click and then Control M to move these on separate lines. So the grid items, we're going to make this an array, and we will repeat, look for the repeating. But what do we want? We want grid item that is .flexible. And we don't need a minimum or a maximum. We'll just give it 100% flexibility. It's going to make all three of these equal widths. And then we're going to add spacing in here so that these are 16 apart horizontally, this spacing in here. Count is going to be 3 columns is what we want. Let's align these to the center, and let's give the row spacing of 16 as well. This is the spacing vertically in here. Pinned views, we're going to have the section headers as the pinned views. So we're going to put this as the header at the top of the screen so that if we made a really long screen here and we scrolled up, the header gets pinned to the top like that. Otherwise, the header would just scroll off the screen. And then let's add the content. I'm going to click enter here. I'm going to actually open the brackets and then click enter. So now I have my content. And let's add in a section here. And I want to use the section that has a header so that we can pin that header to the top. So content and header here. I'm going to open the brackets and then press enter, and then I'll open the brackets and press enter here as well. The header is just going to say select a profile color. We'll give this a font of headline. And the section, let's do a for each because we want to loop on a bunch of colors here. We'll go 0 ... less than maybe 20 for now, and then click enter. And this will be for each index for a second. We're going to change this in 1 second. Let's add a circle and let's just see what that looks like. Let's open up the canvas. I'm going to use Option Command Enter. You can also just click this to open the canvas here. Option Command Enter. And our screen is starting to come together. Let's create some colors. So at the top here, I'm going to create we'll say let profile colors of type array of color. And I'll set it equal to an array. Let's just go with a bunch of random colors for now. So we're going to do red, green, orange, blue, mint, purple, cayenne, teal, and indigo. I really like the indigo color. Let's loop on the profile colors. And these profile colors are not identifiable, so we're going to need to add in the ID, the hashable value that we're going to loop on. And for that, we're going to use the \self to loop on the hash value of each color. This will now be each color, and then we are going to simply say .fill with the color. Let's add some padding on the outside of the lazy V grid. We'll go 24, push these off the edge. And let's make that .horizontal only, so we are still at the top of the screen, horizontal. All right, and then we have some logic so that when we click one of these, we have this little animation for whether or not it is selected here. So let's handle that now. So when I tap on one of these circles, I'll add a on-tap gesture. Let's up here put a quick @state private var selected color of type color, make it optional, set it equal to nil. And we'll just set the selected color equal to the color that we are tapping on. Now I want to update the UI so that it changes when we actually tap on it. So what we're going to do is actually we're going to get a little hacky here. We're going to make the circle for each of these our accent color, so they all look the same. And then on top of each circle, we'll add an overlay, and we're going to put our color on top. So there's our color, and let's clip shape the color into a circle, of course, so that it matches. And lastly, let's just put a little bit of padding here. So if I make the padding maybe 6, we can actually see that the colored circle is 6 pixels smaller than the background circle. So we're just going to animate the padding here when we select on it. So if selected color is equal to the color, let's make this 10, otherwise 0. So now let's click these and they should select. And we'll add a little bit of animation in here. So down at the bottom, on the entire scroll view, we'll add .animation. Let's use the maybe smooth, because smooth operator. And we will animate on change of the selected color. Last thing I want to do is when there is a color selected, let's put the CTA button at the bottom of the screen here. So I'm going to use these safe area insets. So when we have scroll views that are going to possibly scroll to through the bottom of the device, I like to use the safe area inset modifier, which will ensure that this is always at the bottom of the device. So down here, we can actually put it pretty much anywhere in our view. We'll just add a .safe area inset. I'm going to hold the option button and click enter to get the full completion. Let's align this to the bottom edge, and within it will just be center aligned within the bottom edge. And we'll use spacing of 16, even though we're not really going to use it. Click enter on the content, and let's add here a Z-stack with a continue button. So I'm going to again go back to the onboarding intro view, and we have our continue button here. I'm going to come back to our color view and put the button. We can see it. We can see it. Outside of the Z-stack, we'll add padding of maybe 24 so that it pushes off the edges of the device. This button will also say continue, but on this Z-stack, I want to add a little bit of a background here. So we'll add a .background. Let's go color.black so that we can see it real quick. So you could imagine if this scroll view scrolled through the bottom of the device. So if we had let me just copy this quickly. So if I had like a bunch of circles on the screen and there was no background for the bottom of the button here, if we hid the background color, this kind of UI looks, some people might prefer that, but I actually don't like that it kind of bleeds through the bottom of the button. So we're going to add a background color here, and I want to match the background of the actual device, which looks like it's white, but if I use .white, that's not going to support both light and dark mode, because when we switch to dark mode, the background's going to obviously be some sort of black. So we're going to pull here the color from the UI colors. There's a UI color initializer here, and here we can use the system background color, which still looks white in this UI. I'm going to delete these extra circles, get back to our starting state. This is a navigation link, which means we need to be in a navigation stack. So here I'm just going to put the preview in a navigation stack. So this should be clickable now. And then let's clean up the code a little bit. I only want to show this button if there is something actually selected here. So let's just say if let selected color. So if we actually have a selected color, then we will draw the CTA button on the screen. And when we put it onto the screen, let's do a .transition so that it animates. We'll do any transition .move from the bottom edge of the device. Let's click this, and then it should pop onto the screen. Let's do it one more time. So there's no button. Let's click a button, and then it animates on. Let's change the smooth to maybe bouncy. I think that might look a little bit better when we click these, and that looks good. I'm going to clean this code up just a tiny bit. I'm going to create a private var, and I'm going to call this the CTA button of type SomeView. And I'm going to cut this button, make it the CTA button, and paste that down here. And then I'm also going to create a private var and call this the color grid of type SomeView. And I'm going to take the whole grid, excluding the padding outside of the grid. Let's put the color grid on the screen, and then we will put the color grid down here. Cool. SwiftUI is yelling at us that actually we don't need, because we're initializing as nil, that is implied, so we can just get rid of that. Sorry, SwiftLint is yelling at us for that. And then the value of selected color is defined, but we are not using it. In the next video, we're going to actually pass selected color into the next view. So we are going to use it, but we're not using it just yet. All right, let's wrap up this video by just copying the name of this. Let's go to our onboarding intro view and make sure the intro view now goes to our color view. So when I click this, which we should be inside a navigation stack, if I click this, it goes to our color view. Cool. That's all for this video. And then in the next video, we're going to wrap up the onboarding flow. Let's go ahead and Option Command C. And then let's make this a feature. We'll add here the onboarding intro view as well as the onboarding color view. Stage and commit. Push it up to GitHub, and I will see you all in the next video.